Hey everyone, so in this video I'm going to be going over the new blog post that came out about a 26.0 update, Total War. So we are finally getting an update to War, and it feels like forever. I honestly can't remember the last time that we had an update to War, but we all know it was desperately needed. War has always been one of my favorite events. It's been the most exciting part of a game, and I play to War myself. So in this update, they want to make it easier for factions to participate in war and feel like they're actually being rewarded. And I agree with this because right now the war rewards I feel are very small compared to other events. It's just a little surprising to me because you can spend, a whole weekend of warring and end up with less than what you would get from a survival road event or level up event or raid tournament, and war being the main event that most players, in my opinion at least, look forward to, it should be the event that rewards players the most as well. So as the first part of the update, War Strongholds. Strongholds can now grant a variety of new effects like bleed, burn, exhaust, slow, and even guardian shield. These war towers will make the game completely different, in my opinion. It'll make different types of teams more viable, or even the teams that you're using even more potent than before. When we think about these abilities, we just think about bleed. It can stack really fast. It can be a great way to take down teams that have a lot of HP. Burn, it's a great way to kind of do additional damage because even after a character with burn dies, the burn transfers to another character. It being flat damage can be super effective. Exhaust is a great way to neutralize Dr. Stevens, Arav, and anyone else that gives 100% AP to self or gives unnatural AP to other characters. Slow is a great way of preventing the enemy team from being able to rush as fast. A slow effect can be really effective on offensive or defensive teams. And then we get to Guardian Shield, which is probably one of the most underrated specialist abilities in the game, but is super effective. A Guardian Shield is great at blocking payback damage, bide damage, normal attacks, rushes, maim damage. It can just block so many different types of damage, and when used effectively, can make your team pretty much impenetrable and will help prevent the enemy from being able to gain AP off of your characters. So along with these upgraded or just different strongholds, we're also going to be seeing less time on how long you can shield a stronghold for. So usually it's a 5-minute timer. Once you claim a stronghold, the enemy cannot attack it or try to get it for at least 5 minutes. This means teams will have to be more diligent at taking towers and using a good strategy, because if a timer is now reduced to say 3 minutes, it means you're going to have to check on those towers more often if you want to ghost them, or if you want to use the stronghold trick where you take a different tower and you move your team from one stronghold to the other. That way you can effectively ghost the tower while still having a team in it up until the last moment. We're also going to be seeing reduced cooldown times on attacks, which will be really great for a lot of players, especially in regions where you do 6v6 war. Just having the timer on different players. I know I've met the cooldown timer before, and it can be pretty annoying because you're kind of just stuck waiting until you're actually allowed to attack the enemy team again. Another pretty useful update that we're going to be seeing is War Camp animation. So we're now going to be seeing exactly if a player is alive or not, or rebuilding. I know it can be really annoying to have to click through every camp to see if they're actually up or not. Sometimes I have no idea because it shows that they're either rebuilding or that they're destroyed, but really they're up and you can actually attack them again. By not being able to see who's actually still alive, it makes it really difficult to kind of plan your strategy and to maximize your time when in war. And in war, time is your most valuable asset. In this update, we're also going to be seeing 2 new war maps, which I think is long overdue. I think it's going to be pretty interesting to have 2 new war maps, Sanctuary and the Kingdom. It'll have different themes of winter and fall. So I think for aesthetics, it'll be really nice to see. It'll be interesting to see the different types of towers that they might put up. If we're in the winter map, we might see an igloo, for example, and that's just a random guess from my Canadian nature there. But I am actually looking forward to this. Just something else to look at from time to time would be nice. So these two maps are being added to the war rotation. And with these additional maps, we're also going to be seeing a variety of different strongholds. So I mean by that, like the number. So we could have 1 stronghold, 3 strongholds, or even up to 5 strongholds. So this is really interesting to me because you really need all hands on deck if there are 5 strongholds that are available. Of course, it also depends on how potent they are, and it'll be interesting to see how many turns each of the strongholds takes. I would be intrigued to know if they changed it from, 4 turns and 5 turns to maybe a tower that's 6 turns that it takes for all the walkers to be emerged. It would just be, a different variety, a change up. Even a tower that was 4 turns and then 5 turns and then 4 turns again would cause players to have to second guess and have to think and do a bit more manual play, which, people don't want to spend a lot of time in war wasting times on towers, but if a tower is good enough, then it's definitely worth it. So along in this update, we're seeing intra-realm matchmaking. So now you're able to actually match factions in your own region. And I like this, but I also don't like this. The reason is, some factions are kind of annoyed at having to face the top faction in their region in every other event. And CRW was kind of their only opportunity to not have to compete against the best faction in their region. Now, the other issue I have is what happens if 2 factions from the same region end up matching each other at the very end? They could just end up point farming for each other because they're on good terms, but I guess at that you could also argue that other factions from other regions could also work it out where they point farm each other at the very end. So the problem will exist irregardless of if you're facing someone within your region or not. The main issue that I foresee is if it actually affects like placing. So say you're faced off against the second place faction and they're 40,000 points behind the first place faction. You end up matching someone within your region and they end up giving you 200,000 points because they'd rather see you come in first than this other faction. Now, this is an extreme, of course, and it could still happen with other factions, just if there's a grudge or if people are on good terms, point farming happens. It's hard to mitigate that effect. Overall, I think people will appreciate being able to face against people from their own region because, we don't have AOWs very often anymore. So it could be a nice addition. Like I've seen cases where the first and second faction in a cross-regional war from the same region, and really the only reason the second place faction couldn't win was because they never faced the first place faction. Anyway, moving on, one of the other additions to this update is mercenaries. So mercenary teams are AI war teams that'll join your war party. So this can be helpful because I know how tedious and frustrating it can be when you're waiting on one person to join your war party and you've been waiting 15-20 minutes, and you know what, it's hard to be in a faction and have all 24 hours covered. So on occasion this would be beneficial for everyone, I think. So having these mercenary players, so these AI players, they'll just be 5-star teams. They can't attack. They give away a lot of points, so it's basically free points that you're giving away each time. But I really don't see a difference between that and people using low-level general bots, that are level 1 to 5 to help them queue and get easier factions. But it's saying that mercenaries will not affect matchmaking in any way. So it's almost like their level is kind of null. It won't be factored in, but it'll be based on the actual players that you have that are queuing in war. So it says that a mercenary will automatically queue after a certain amount of time has expired. In 8v8 war, the maximum number of mercenaries that you can have on a team is 3, and it takes 24 minutes of waiting for someone to queue to get all 3 bots in. And in 6v6 war, you can only get 2 bots in and it takes 10 minutes to queue. So I guess that's kind of fair. You don't want your majority of your war party to be bots that not only just give away points, but we have people who do a lot of solo runs anyway, where you have a really big player that is playing in a smaller faction and they're decimating lower ranking factions, or higher ranking factions in war, I guess, just because they're unable to actually kill this player. I guess one of the other upsides with having these bots, at least from my perspective, is that they aren't going to coin rebuild. So unless the opponent ends up like slow rebuilding them, you can't expect them to pop back up. And if they do, well, they're kind of free points. So overall, I see the positives and the negatives to having mercenaries. I guess once we see it in action, we'll have a better idea of if it's a positive effect or a negative effect. And so to round out this blog post, everyone, there's a Total War event that's coming out. So a series of 5 wars over the next 6 weeks using the new maps, the new strongholds, and new rewards. So this is going to be kind of exciting. I really hope the new rewards are worth it. There's an event beginning with a mission event that'll let players stock up on huge quantities of war energy. So I'm really hoping that their definition of huge quantities of war energy is like 100 cans, because I just used some of my royal flushes to get 50 war cans because I'm always so low, and I would really like to have 100 cans on average and have decent drops all the way through, instead of having to use my coins every single war weekend to have to get more war energy cans. So part of these amazing rewards that Scopely is talking about, they're introducing a 6-star experience trainer named Bernadette. So this is something that the players have been asking for a while now too, because S-Class toons require so many trainers and so much food to level up, and Benedict really doesn't do it anymore. So the introduction of Bernadette is greatly appreciated. I'm curious to know how difficult it'll be to acquire these characters, well, these trainers, I guess. They're equivalent to 4 Benedicts or 48,000 EXP. I don't have the math done for how much EXP it takes to level up an S-Class toon, but I feel like it's still going to be a lot of Bernadettes. Overall, I'm trying to keep my hopes high. I'm looking forward to these new strongholds. This is going to mean a lot of changes to some attack teams and defense teams, in my opinion, because if a team is a fast rushing team on defense, that uses unnatural AP gain, well, if exhaust is applied to your toons from strongholds, you'll definitely need to change up your defensive team. If you don't have a way of recovering from bleed, but there are like 3 bleed towers, well, you're going to need some way to recover from bleed, either with bleed resist mods or a toon that rushes or an active skill. There's just so many different things that could happen now, and I'm really interested and intrigued to know what is coming in the future, and I'm excited to do some team builds based on the different war towers that'll be present. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching and listening to my video.